Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
Saul Alinsky Tactics on display in Wisconsin as union thugs continue to bully those who are trying to balance the budget. I'm Matt Barber, Vice President of Liberty Counsel Action and Associate Dean with Liberty University School of Law, in for Matt Staver today. And joining me again in studio is Shawn Akers, Dean of Liberty's Helms School of Government and Policy Analyst with Liberty Counsel. Shawn, we've been watching, the country really has been watching the events in Wisconsin for the past several weeks involving Governor Scott Walker and Republicans in both the state assembly and the state senate doing what they can to balance the budget in a state like most states across the country that finds itself in dire straits in terms of their financial and economic condition. The battle has been one where some collective bargaining provisions that have been granted to the unions in the past are being rolled back, and the unions are some of the power that the unions have been wielding in that state is being diminished. Anytime you push against the unions ever so slightly, ask for any kind of concession whatsoever, the strategy is to burst out into oftentimes violent protests and so forth. We've seen this in Wisconsin, where the unions have mobilized, bringing people from all over the country, busing people in to the state capitol there. They have run and overtaken the assembly, done in excess of $7 million worth of damage to the state house, really just trashed the state house, people lying about being sick, missing school. It's just been an absolute debacle, yet Governor Walker and conservatives and Republicans in the state legislature there have stood their ground bravely, while Democrats, the famous Wisconsin 14, have abandoned their duty. And here's the irony. They were able to parse out some financial aspects of the legislation, which requires 20 senators to be present in order to get a quorum. That's why the 14 Democrats fled into Wisconsin. They're being affectionately called fleabaggers. They have fled into Wisconsin. So the Republicans did what they had to do in order to get around the need for that quorum to get movement on this legislation. They pulled out the collective bargaining aspect, voted it through, and of course the far left neo-Marxists and the unions and so forth have lost their collective mind because the Republicans, the grown-ups, are moving forward with trying to balance the budget.
You know, Matt, there are a couple of things that really stand out about this. One, right off the top of my head, is the fact that both the Senate Democrats and the union members are saying we deserve to get what we want because we're not going to work. That the first tactic that we're using to get what we want is not going to work, whether it's the senators skipping out on session or whether it's the employees of the state making up false excuses for not going to work. This is not a way that we've recognized in the past as getting what you want by not going to work. It's actually going to work and working to change things. The other is this. I find it very ironic that at a time when the term bullying is being used all over the nation, when the President of the United States is even coming out, and while we're not paying a lot of attention to Iran and the economy and things like that, we are definitely definitely going to stick the federal arm in between every couple of 12-year-olds that say ugly things to each other, and we're going to make a federal case out of it and call it bullying. What you've got here is quite literally the same spirit that you see on the streets of Cairo and Lebanon in Wisconsin. A very rebellious type of atmosphere with folks making very violent statements, very violent threats. Absolutely. The number of death threats against Republican senators are astounding.
Yep.
And yet you don't see anybody with the federal government coming out against bullying there. Well, you see that's a perfectly acceptable tactic. Now, Matt, you've pointed out that this all can be traced back to some of the great teachings, and I use that very tongue-in-cheek, of Saul Alinsky, particularly Rule 5, which says that you've got to demonize your opponent rather than fight them on the merits. The merits here come down to whether people should be paid for the work they do and how much you should be allowed to strong-arm the government into paying for less work. In the real world, that hurts all of us. The state is doing what it has to stay afloat, and what we see are the adoption of tactics that wouldn't be allowed under other circumstances, Matt.
Well, I think the great irony in all this, if it weren't so serious, it would be funny, is to hear these Democrats over in Wisconsin run to the microphones, to the media, to scream that Republicans have subverted democracy by voting this bill through in their absence, without them there. Well, why are they absent? Because they have fled from the state and abrogated their duty to be there and give it a, they love to throw around the term an up or down vote. Well, that's the thing about so-called progressives. When there's going to be an up or down vote and they're going to leave, they do anything that they can subvert democracy, circumvent democracy in order to do it. So when the Republicans legally went through and parsed out, did what they needed to do to legally vote this through, gave them 3 weeks to return to take part in democracy, they being these AWOL Democrats, they finally said, we've got to move this thing forward. They did. And what's fascinating to me, Saul Alinsky actually trained the old guard of the National Education Association, according to an article in One News Now. So he hands-on trained these people. These are pure Saul Alinsky tactics. They line up, and it's so amazing to me to hear them co-opt the middle class and say this is about the middle class. It's the middle class that, as the unions pad their pockets and through our middle class taxpayer dollars, it's the middle class that is suffering, that is paying for all these union benefits that the unions refuse to even give a little bit of way on. So really, the people the right to work individuals, those who are rolling back some of the leverage that the unions have in order to pad their own pockets, they are representing the non-union types. Those who are trying to balance a budget are representing the middle class. It's all semantics. It's Saul Alinsky. It's Orwellian doublespeak, where you say black is white, white is black, and it's been really an education in Saul Alinsky socialist tactics.
Well, Matt, I hope that everybody comes to their senses pretty quickly, because where Saul Alinsky had his tactics, there are some principles used by others that could conceivably come into play here. I'm not saying that they will or that they even should, but I do remember a time when Ronald Reagan was faced with a group of airline traffic controllers that decided they were going to strong-arm the federal government in much the same way that the state is being strong-armed in Wisconsin right now. And what President Reagan said was that, well, you guys have about 72 hours to return to work, or we're going to let you go. And what he found out was they didn't need as many airline traffic controllers as they thought they did, because they did just fine and they downsized in the process, and it was a very good outcome. So for those senators that are refusing to come to work and the teachers that are refusing to come to work, I would probably keep those airline traffic controllers in the back of your mind.
Well, there is no right. You hear this couched as a civil rights issue, and and the collective bargaining rights. There are no collective bargaining rights. So I would personally love to see the union strike. There are a lot of unemployed folks in Wisconsin that can use the jobs that they will lose. So I say, let them do it. Well, folks, it's a tumultuous time. The battle lines have been drawn. We have chosen our side. Liberty Counsel chooses to side with the middle class, to side with those who seek to balance the budget. We have to get back to sanity as our nation and every state in this country is struggling with our economic situation. Go to lc.org to learn more about Liberty Counsel, to learn how you can become part of Liberty Counsel's mission, or give us a call at 1-800-671-1776. Help us at Liberty Counsel. Take back America.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.